years of his retirement, saying almost nothing in public, and good for him. It's a dignified and restrained posture that is long-standing tradition among former chief executives. But nobody's staying silent in 2018, so President Bush is now speaking out, and he has a cause, seeking amnesty for millions of illegal immigrants that his administration allowed into this country. The context for his latest remarks was a speech that Bush was giving in the United Arab Emirates. That's an authoritarian Islamic petrostate. Alongside him as he spoke was Michael Milken, the convicted felon and financier. During his remarks, the former president said he wants immediate amnesty for DACA recipients. Quote, "America's their home," he said. "Congress has got to get it fixed." Bush explained that we must give citizenship to illegal immigrants as a reward for providing low-wage labor to companies who don't feel like paying American wages. Quote, "There are people willing to do jobs that Americans won't do," the former president said. "We ought to say thank you and welcome them." Well, this is the magical world of our elites, people who've never had to worry about how illegal immigrants might affect their kids' schools, or the crime rate in their gated neighborhoods, or the social cohesion of their communities, because they're insulated from all of that. Instead, they repeat "diversity is our strength" 3 times like a spell and assume the best will happen. The rest of us, as the former president noted, can shut up and say thank you. So how exactly is this faith-based immigration policy working out so far? Well, let's see. We watched dreamers blockade Disneyland. We watched them harass lawmakers outside their homes to demand an amnesty that they have no legal right to. That's ominous enough. But there are other signs. Here's one. Linda Sarsour. She's a professional activist. She's the child of Palestinian immigrants. You would think that she'd be grateful for the opportunities this country has given her family, especially considering where they came from. But no. Linda Sarsour is not grateful. She hates our country and the people who founded it. During a demonstration yesterday in Washington, Sarsour denounced America and then went on to attack Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer for the color of his skin. Watch this.
I'm talking to Chuck Schumer, who's also from Brooklyn. I'm tired of white men negotiating on the backs of people of color and communities like ours. But I also remember that I live in a country that was founded on the extermination of indigenous people. You have a fascist in the highest office of this land who is running ICE, which has always been a rogue agency. But now they're acting like the Gestapo, going and picking up people in the middle of the night.
Notice the cheers from the crowd. A lot of people agree with Linda Sarsour, and that should make you nervous. We've invited millions and millions of people into this country in recent years. There are now more immigrants in America right now than at any time in the history of the country. Is America more united than ever before? Is it stronger? Please. It's just the opposite, and everyone knows it. Maybe that's because our elites welcome immigrants by telling them how horrible America is and how bigoted its native population. Our immigrants believe that. Why wouldn't they? It's not their fault, it's ours. We're creating a lot of Linda Sarsours. This is a recipe for civil war. Diverse countries need a reason to stick together. They don't do it organically. Our elites ought to be staying up late, night after night, every night, trying to figure out what that reason is. Why should we hang together? A shared language, a shared culture, a shared set of core beliefs? Pick one. Our ruling class rejects all of those. Just shut up and say thank you. That's their answer. It won't end well. Ivan Sanchez is a Democratic congressional candidate in Texas for the 7th District there, and he joins us tonight. Mr. Sanchez, thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tucker, for allowing us to practice democracy and allowing the other side of the aisle to say a few words.
Oh, amen. We do every night, and I believe in that with total sincerity. I want to hear people I disagree with. That's right, the American dream. Thank you. But maybe we'll agree on this. Tell me your response when you hear a child of immigrants say to a room full of people here illegally, immigrants, this country was founded on the extermination of indigenous peoples. Does that bother you?
Well, I believe we're a country of immigrants, right? Everyone from all over the world came here and are still coming here. We did, in a sense, force ourselves in to create now the greatest country that the world has ever seen.
But I guess, well, we're not. I mean, I'm not an immigrant. You're probably not an immigrant either. We're not all immigrants, but there are a lot of immigrants here. I agree, and I think a lot of them. Oh, you are? Okay, great. Well, I think a lot of immigrants are good people, actually. But I think it's really important that they become part of this country. And in order to do that, you have to love the country. Does it bother you when someone that immigrants listen to, like Linda Sarsour, says this is a bad country run by racists, and its history is inherently racist? This country is built on murdering people. Do you believe that?
I think they're just a little bit frustrating about the lack of representation much in Congress or our legislators. My friend, I am basically a dreamer with papers. I was brought to this country at 6 years old through absolutely no fault of my own. My mother was actually a prosecuting attorney and my father a geophysicist in the country of Colombia. And my father was kidnapped, my mom's office was blown up, until a letter came to my mother's office saying, next time you put your kids in the school bus, they're not coming back. So we landed here. I was sold on the idea that we were coming to see the great Disneyland and Bill Clinton, and we had to start all over. But I don't know why
and I'll stop you there because it's a familiar and a great story, and I'm in favor of that story. But I just want to but the details matter to me. I'm an American citizen, I suppose, like you. Do you think, you said they don't have representation, do you think people who aren't citizens deserve representation in Congress?
I think they're humans, and everybody deserves the respect and dignity. Definitely. I have no idea why.
That wasn't my question.
So privileged to have that paper.
Do people? Wait, hold on. Do people who are not American citizens deserve to be represented in the Congress of the United States? You suggested they were.
They deserve a voice.
This clear.
They deserve a voice. They deserve a voice. I think even if
why would they deserve a voice in the Congress? Okay, even if I'm not asking Reagan. He's not here. Okay, hold on. I'm just asking you. So people who are not American citizens deserve to be heard in the Congress. Does that include people living in Namibia or Norway or Iceland? I mean, does the world deserve a voice in Congress? Because our understanding was, the American understanding was Congress is for American citizens. That's what our democracy is.
Yeah, the people that are definitely contributing to our society and live in our neighborhoods definitely do deserve a voice. And, you know, if we go...
So citizenship doesn't matter. You don't need to be a citizen to be represented by the Congress.
No. Of course you do. But there's people that have been living here for longer times than I have. And pay taxes and take their kids to school and contribute to society. And literally,
look, I'm not attacking him. It's just that if you're going to have a country, you got to figure out what it means to be a citizen. The number one country in the world. That's what we want to do. This country provided us opportunity. How beautiful is that? We want to make sure that this country will progress. We want to stay the number one in the world, right? And there's China. I believe
Japan,
that, and that's why. And Russia, I want that too. Which is wait, slow down. I'm not going to let you give your speech because I probably agree with a lot of it. I want to remain number one too. That's why I want to ask you these two questions. Before we as Americans let people become citizens and vote in our elections and get represented in that Congress, should we ask them to agree with what's in the Constitution and speak English?
Yeah, the thing is that the last immigration policy we had is older than the internet or computers. It's very outdated. If you want to legally immigrate from Mexico or from India, the wait is 25 years old.
We're almost out of time, so I'm really going to press you, Ivan. Hold on. I want to press you to answer my question, which is, should we ask that immigrants, before they become citizens, speak English well and agree with the Constitution?
I agree that they need to learn the language like I have, right?
Yes.
And of course, follow the law. But at times, just like my mother, right? She came here to the United States all of a sudden. A lot of people cannot wait 25 years to immigrate. So their life depends on it.
They don't want to wait 25 years, but it's not really up to them. Is it up to them?
If your family is under... Yeah, they can't. If their family's life is endangered, would you wait?
Oh, but people's lives are in danger around the world, and I feel sorry for them. But why does that mean they have a right to live in my country?
Well, the country was found on immigration, and
no, it wasn't. Actually,
I mean,
it wasn't founded as a haven for the rest of the world. Whatever the poem says, that's not true. So, but I'm just saying, where did they get that right? Why do they have a right to move here if their lives are in danger?
Well, we're the most caring nation in the world, right? We have asylum, and that's one of the ways that I came. And this is not about even deporting these people would hurt our economy significantly. I mean, only deporting the dreamers.
Right.
We would. spend about $60 billion.
That's outside the look. That's a whole nother debate, and I don't know if you're prepared for that. But I mean, thanks a lot for coming on. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks. Victor Davis Hanson is a fellow at the Hoover Institution, a professor emeritus of classics at California State University at Fresno, and he joins us tonight. Professor, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Tucker.
So my concern is, how does a country of 320 million people who don't have much in common with each other hang together? And what's the answer to that?
Well, we have to have a common set of values. We have to share in the Constitution. And we're a great experiment. It's never been tried before or after the founding of the United States. We're a multiracial society, but we have one common culture. So our appearance, our superficial appearance, has to be incidental to our character. It's not essential. So if we all start going into tribal cliques, then there is no unification. That's what's happening now. And I felt bad for your guest, but my gosh, it's not just the Trump miracle that's giving empowerment to the working entry-level classes. It's also a radical curtailment in illegal immigration. So for the first time, unemployment may be in peacetime below 4%. And employers have to compete now. They've got to go to the barrio. They've got to go to the inner city. They've got to go to red state poor whites. And they say, you're the only game in town. And they have leverage. And that's why wages are going up after a decade.
Yeah, maybe we'll do something to improve the schools when we have to, when we can't just import a new labor force from abroad and outsource that there. But why would our elites, because what you said is so sensible and obvious, I think, to anyone who thinks about it, if you have a country divided by tribe, it's going to be at war with itself. Why are our elites encouraging that, which they are?
Well, you had a perfect example in your entry-level remarks, because Ms. Sarsour represents the identity politics left, where she wants a demographic that she, in this Manichaean way, think it's white or non-white. It's almost like we have to have DNA badges. And then she's going to be the collective representative of all the oppressed non-white people for her careerist purposes. And then I admire George W. Bush, but he inadvertently got himself into a situation where he's a spokesman for cheap labor. So he goes overseas and violates Churchill's dictum, you never criticize the incumbent president when you're on foreign soil. And then he says, we need cheap labor. And you think, well, who needs cheap labor? And then he says something that's very tragic. He says, we need people to pick cotton in 105-degree weather. And I'm thinking, cotton picking has been mechanized for 50 years, and mechanization is increasing as illegal immigration decreases. And that was the argument, Tucker, of the 19th century slave owner that said, we need people from Africa to pick cotton in 100-degree weather. It's not a good argument. It's not ethically on the right side of history.
No, our ruling class hasn't updated its perceptions in a few decades. Professor, thanks for joining us tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
I want to bring you a Fox News alert. Democratic Senator Mark Warner of Virginia, Fox News has learned, texted with a Russian oligarch lobbyist in an effort to contact the author of the Trump dossier, Christopher Steele, because you can't make this up. Fox News' Ed Henry has this story, and he joins us with details. Hey, Ed.
Well, Tucker, good to see you. These texts obtained exclusively by Fox News. They show, and you can see them right here, I have them, that Senator Mark Warner, a Democrat who's been leading one of the investigations of President Trump's ties to Russia, had extensive contact with that lobbyist for an oligarch who offered him access to Steele, who, of course, wrote the dossier. Warner texted at one point he would, quote, rather not have a paper trail in case he could not seal an agreement with the former British spy to testify. Steele so far has not agreed to interview with the Senate Intel panel. He began, Warner did, texting with this lobbyist, Adam Waldman, in February 2017 about getting testimony from Russian billionaire Oleg Deripaska, who had his visa revoked by the State Department because of charges that he has ties to Russian organized crime. Warner wanted to connect directly with Steele without anyone else being in the loop, at least at first. Quote, we have so much to discuss, you need to be careful, but we can help our country, Warner texted Waldman on March 22nd. I'm in, Waldman, who is a firm with ties to Hillary Clinton, texted back. Now, Waldman noted Steele was concerned about media leaks, so Warner sent another text, quote, we want to do this right. Private in London, don't want to send a letter yet, because if we can't get agreement, would rather not have paper trail. Now, the panel, the Senate Intel panel, got these texts from Waldman last September after they asked for them. And a Warner aide acknowledged that Warner and Richard Burr, the Republican chairman, revealed the text to their colleagues because, quote, they realized out of context it doesn't look great for Warner. But Warner and Burr stressed to Fox in a statement tonight that the chairman of the committee, Richard Burr, was in the loop about all this. Waldman, by the way, did not return calls seeking comment. He signed a $40,000 a month retainer in 2009 and 2010 to petition the U.S. government on behalf of that Russian billionaire. That billionaire, by the way, is supposed to have ties to Paul Manafort, which is why the committee wanted to get to him. But remember, this investigation started with these various committees and now Robert Mueller looking at the president's ties to Russians. Now it's being turned around a little bit on Democrats. Tucker.
A little bit. Doesn't look good when a president says he doesn't. I mean, a senator says he doesn't want, quote, a paper trail. That's not good. Ed, thank you for that. It was a great story.
Good to see you, Tucker. Thanks.
One FBI informant says Russia spent millions trying to influence the Clintons and the Obama administration. That next. One FBI informant says that Russia spent millions of dollars attempting to influence the Clintons. Douglas Campbell has been supplying the FBI with information since 2009. He says there was an extensive kickback and bribery scheme meant to secure approval of that famous uranium deal. Now, in testimony to 3 separate congressional committees, Campbell says Russia, the government, spent millions through the lobbying firm APCO Worldwide in Washington to assist the Global Clinton Initiative. They did this in the hope that the Obama administration would then treat Russia favorably on the deal. Peter Schweitzer is the author of Clinton Cash. He's followed things like this for many years, and he joins us tonight. So, Peter, this seems like a big story. Doesn't mean it'll be covered by anybody but us tomorrow. But this man at the center of it, Campbell, can you explain his role in this?
Sure. So Campbell's a very interesting guy. He has a history that hints at some background either in the military or intelligence, but he found himself in the mid-2000s basically serving in this capacity with Tenex, this Russian firm, as a consultant. They were paying him $50,000 a month to help things happen in Washington, D.C. as a consultant. He saw what was happening. He became an informant for the FBI and started sharing information. And what he is saying is that, in this 2009-2010 period, when Uranium One was being considered and finally approved by the Obama administration, that the Russians were funneling money through APCO, this lobbying firm, in an effort to help that happen and to benefit Hillary Clinton. And he says he told the FBI about this back in 2010, and they've basically tried to bury it ever since.
Interesting. What's so striking about this story is the Russians were concerned that this deal wouldn't go through. And yet we've been assured by everyone in Washington, the establishment, many idiot news anchors in the tank for the left, but all sort of the response people, oh, it was no big deal. It was authorized by all these different agencies. It was not controversial. But it was controversial. There were people who thought it was a bad idea to give any of our uranium to a Russian company, weren't there?
Oh, that's exactly right. I mean, take Congressman King from Long Island. He was the ranking member on the Homeland Security Committee. He's not a bomb thrower by any means. He was opposed to this deal. The ranking Republican on the House Foreign Affairs Committee was opposed to this deal. Senator Barrasso of Wyoming was opposed to this deal, all raising legitimate questions and concerns about it. So this was a controversial deal outside the Obama administration, but within the Obama administration, there was very little debate, and it was rammed through rather quickly.
So at this point, are we certain, and I don't want to get over our skis at all on this, but are we certain that the government of Russia spent money in order to lobby the Obama administration and perhaps the Clintons, she was serving as Secretary of State at the time, in order to secure this uranium deal? We know that.
Well, what we know is that the Russians gave money to APCO, $3 million. The Russians, according to Campbell, in audio and videotapes that the FBI have, say that it was used for the purposes of Uranium One. APCO is denying that and saying, no, it involved other work that they were doing on behalf of Russia. And, of course, that's part of the problem, Tucker, is all this Russian money is sloshing around Washington, D.C. So it's not a surprise that there are a lot of people that are making money and a lot of people that were trying to do bidding for Moscow, whether it was on Uranium One or on other issues.
And if you're going to pretend that Russia is our greatest international threat, you'd have to be concerned about this. But, of course, they're not, because they're liars. Peter, thank you. Good to see you.
Thanks, Tucker.
Macy's, the department store, is unveiling a brand new line of fashionable Muslim garb consistent with Sharia law. We'll ask the head of the New York branch of NOW, the National Organization for Women, about whether this counts as a victory for feminism. Stay tuned. Is rising very quickly, and that has implications for social cohesion or national security. But it's also influencing fashion. Macy's has announced a new line of fashionable Islamic guard, modest Islamic guard, targeted at Muslims. That is the latest retailer to join that trend. Both Nike and American Eagle already have lines like that. What does it mean? Sonia Osorio is president of the National Organization for Women in New York City, and she joins us tonight. Sonia, thanks for coming on.
I'm happy to be here.
So this announcement was cheered by feminists, and it got me thinking, do you think that Islam is a feminist religion?
Well, what I think is that religion in every form throughout history has oppressed women in many ways, and Islam isn't any different. I think what's striking to me about this new line of Macy's is that Muslim women in the United States have $44 billion in buying power. That's
right.
That's pretty spectacular.
No, that's great. I mean, I'm all for buying power, though. But I want to get back to the clothing and its implications. I mean, the point of Islamic clothing is to promote modesty among women for a bunch of different reasons. It's in the Quran. It's of course a central part of Islamic culture. So, are you for that? Do you think women should be coerced to dress modestly? Is that a feminist goal?
I think what a feminist goal is for women to be in control of their lives and their destinies and to have choices. So whether a woman wants to wear a hijab or she doesn't is really not the point. I think what's really interesting, what we've been seeing is here.
Wait. What do you mean? I'm confused. What is? It's not the point. So if I say, as Islamic countries do, you don't have a choice. You have to wear the hijab because you need to be. You need to be modest, and if you're not, you could get raped, and if you do, it's your fault. And you have to avert your gaze from men and not touch non-relatives who are men. Is that okay with you?
I was referring to the United States. But you know what's really interesting? If you take a look at what's happening, here you have in the United States women who had never donned a hijab in their entire life and marched over to JFK Airport at the time of the Trump travel ban and started wearing a hijab because as a symbol of resistance in protest to that. And at the same time, so they're wearing them as a symbol of empowerment. And at the same time, you have right now in Iran, you have women who are bravely getting up on platforms and ripping off their hijabs because it's compulsory there, because it's compulsory there, and they're risking their lives and they're being arrested.
Right. No, and I would agree with you. I'm on their side completely. Yeah. But would you be, if Macy's sold a new line of Chinese foot binding shoes, would those be empowering too?
I think it's a little bit different because that actually would damage your feet. You'd have to probably go to.
Well, I don't know. I mean, all cosmetic procedures
damage
the. Hold on. Whoa! All cosmetic procedures damage the body. All of them. Well, so that's not really an answer. Would you be? But if women said, I find that empowering, just as I find it empowering to wear clothing that millions of Muslim women are forced to wear because they're women in order to be modest, that's somehow empowering. So I'm wondering, is there anything that's not empowering?
It's not that simple. It's not black and white. For some women, it is indeed empowering. And for others, it is not. And it really is a matter of perspective as to where you are. Let's talk about you.
What about female genital mutilation? Is that, can I ask you, because that's a feature too?
They're in the subway on August days.
Right.
I feel so bad for American men with their suits and their ties when it's humid and 98
but
degrees.
But probably for other reasons. But may I ask you a question?
No, for the same reason.
So okay,
you're letting society tell you how you should dress.
I just can't get past this idea, and I'm trying to be open-minded because I'm an open-minded man, a modern man. But the idea that a garment that a religion has forced women to wear for more than 1,000 years because they're women, forcing them to be modest, is somehow empowering for women. Do you think that, for example, women are asked to walk behind their husbands, or in some countries are not allowed to drive or vote? Under certain circumstances, can that be empowering? Can female genital mutilation be empowering? That's common in Islamic countries.
I think those are quite extreme examples that you're trying to compare.
No,
someone
I don't
wearing,
know why. They're all features of the same
No.
religion, and they're all gender specific. So I don't know. I mean, I think they're extreme too. I agree with you, but I think the hijab is extreme. But you don't for some reason, and I don't know why.
You know, as I said, there are women who do find it empowering, but most importantly, it's really not the top issue. I don't go to work every day and think about what wardrobes women are wearing and what it represents, because I know enough women.
Oh, really? Because I thought that was a huge part of women's liberation.
No,
actually,
I'll tell you what's a big part of women's liberation is making sure that the Trump administration does not roll back our rights to full reproductive health care.
Abortion, right.
I go to work every day to think about how to close the wage gap.
I'm starting to think maybe you care more about identity politics than women. I'm just throwing that out there. I mean, if you're endorsing the hijab, maybe it's not really about women. Has that occurred to you?
I'm not endorsing. The only thing that I'm endorsing here today with you and with all of your viewers is that discrimination is alive and well for women in this country.
In the form of the hijab, for example, just to name one.
No, it's alive and well, more importantly,
this is so lunatic,
in the
I can't go on.
workplace. In the workplace. What we need to do is end sexual harassment in the workplace.
And the hijab, too. I'd throw that in.
Close the wage gap. And if those women can do that while wearing a hijab, more power to them. And I will be there with them fighting for it.
Or FGM, whatever it takes. Sonia, thank you so much. Great to see you.
Thank you so much. It's been fun.
Thanks. America appears to be getting sucked into a war in Syria. The shooting started last night. Did you know that? Most people didn't. Will this help you? Will it help America in any way? We're going to talk to someone who supports it. We'll be right back. For you on red light cameras, the unconstitutional, greed-inspired disaster that have invaded many American cities, in case you haven't noticed. Last night, we welcomed Arizona Representative Travis Grantham, who is bravely campaigning to ban red light cameras in his state because they exploit the population. Today, the Arizona House blessedly approved Grantham's bill 31-27. It now goes to the state Senate in Arizona. Of course, our well wishes and fervent prayers are with Travis Grantham in his efforts. Since 2001, Americans have spent thousands of lives and trillions of dollars in Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Yemen, Pakistan, and a whole bunch of other countries. Hard to find a single person who believes America is richer or happier as a result, or the world more stable. Not surprisingly, Americans are not enthusiastic for more foreign wars, so now Washington is just conducting them without telling you anything about it. It's happening in Syria. You probably didn't know about it because it wasn't reported much. Some White House personnel thing took precedence, but last night, the U.S. conducted airstrikes on Syrian government forces and said it was in response to an attack on U.S.-based forces. Without much of a debate, we appear to be sucked into another war in Syria. Michael Walz is a Republican candidate for Congress in Florida. He was a senior advisor for counterterrorism to Vice President Dick Cheney, and he joins us tonight. Thanks a lot for coming on. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, Tucker.
So I realize these things are really complicated. That's the nature of them. Yeah. And there are, upsides and downsides. But if you take 3 steps back, life expectancy in the United States just went down, reported today for the second year in a row. A lot of hurting people in this country. Right. How does getting involved in a war in Syria, and we're involved in a war in Syria, help Americans in any way?
Well, Tucker, first I think we need to take a step back and kind of go macro to micro. And, the world has enjoyed its longest period of prosperity post-World War II, led by the United States, defended by the United States military, the system that I think we often take for granted of relatively free trade, of democratic values, of individual liberty. Not all countries are perfect, but the United States has to lead. So in this case, and specifically, I think what we saw in the last 8 years, particularly in the Middle East, is what happens when we have a commander-in-chief, in this case, President Obama, who decides, you know what, the United States' engagement abroad does more harm than good, doesn't help the United States, and let's withdraw American leadership. And we saw that when President Obama backed out of Iraq, and he almost backed out of Afghanistan.
I got to interrupt you because
we saw the rise of ISIS.
Your platitudes. Hold on, I'm sorry. Yeah. I agree with everything you said. America's the best. Our leadership is critical to global prosperity. I agree with that. Obama was bad.
Well, that's how it benefits the United States, though.
I agree, but I'm talking about specifically, we are now in a shooting war in Syria. which has had the worst civil war in the world in the last few years. And I want to know how specifically that benefits America. I think it's a fair question given the recent past.
Well, I think, look, let's look at what's happened in Europe the last 4 or 5 years coming out of Syria, and then what's happened in the United States. We had the rise of ISIS in the wake of Obama's withdrawal from Iraq. President Trump has led a strategy to defeat ISIS as a state. It's not defeated as a movement, but it is defeated as a state. And it's not a surprise that a lot of those attacks in Europe have slowed down, if not stopped. And a lot of the inspiration in the United States, whether it's San Bernardino or Orlando or other places, have also stopped. So I think Americans are safer as a result of President Trump's strategy to take ISIS down. And now
the key piece
is, what do we do in the aftermath? And that's going to be incredibly difficult and complicated.
But what's so confusing is, I agree with everything you said once again, but it doesn't get to the question I asked, which is, you've got Bashar al-Assad, who's obviously a dictator, but he was against ISIS too. And now we're fighting him? It seems demented to me, and I bet you if you polled most Americans, they would agree with me.
Well, what I think the administration is doing now, and what President Trump is doing now, is shifting from ISIS to Iran. And Russia is heavily involved. And there's a lot of people, I think, rightly asking, why not just let the Russians take care of it? Well, I'll tell you a couple of reasons. One, the Russians don't care about ISIS. They care about defending Assad. Two, they're aligned with Iran, and Iran has made more gains in the last decade under the Obama administration in terms of advancing its hegemony, which is not in the United States' interest or Israel's interest, than they've made in the last 1,000 years. And three, I'll quote a former NATO commander who said the Russians have weaponized refugees, piled them into Europe, allowed ISIS to infiltrate, and have done more to destabilize our partners in Europe than the Warsaw Pact ever did. So I think all of those things, Tucker, are in our interest.
With respect, that's just pure propaganda, in my opinion. The Russia and Iran are bad. I'm not defending them, but they didn't do that. I mean, as you know. Anyway, I wish we had more time. Thank you very much for joining us.
All right. Thanks.
Parades are fun. President Trump wants to throw one for the 4th of July, and a lot of people are collapsing into panic. That story's next.
This program is...
It's a good bet if the president likes something, the press will hate it. It's like a physics principle, the opposite reaction thing. We're reaching new extremes on that, though. This week, it emerged that after visiting France, the president became enthusiastic about a military parade. I thought we should put one on here, like the ones we had after World War II or Desert Storm. So, of course, he was labeled a tyrant almost immediately. Watch.
It seems the president's requested parade was approved quickly because I think it took place early this morning. Look, there you go. There's your parade.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Trump told the Pentagon to plan a military parade. All right, check your cards. Who has dictator bingo?
Do you think there's another piece of this totalitarianism?
We're getting more North Korean every day in this country.
It does seem to be deeply un-American, certainly in 2018.
Who let all the dumb people on TV? It's unbelievable. Joe Concha covers the media for The Hill. He joins us tonight. So, Joe, my favorite, and by the way, I'm totally agnostic. I just don't have strong feelings about this one way or the other. But I do love the guy. I think he was a Green Party candidate for something who said he was going to stand in front of the tanks like Tank Man in Tiananmen Square in '89. Would he be joined by reporters, do you think?
It's sounding like it based on that montage, Tucker. Look, I'm in New Jersey. Background kind of gives that away. And in New York, I go to a couple of parades that go on there per year. In fact, there are actually more than 20 parades per year, basically almost every week during the summer in New York. I mean, you have the Coney Island Mermaid Parade. You have the Pulaski Parade, which honors a Polish-American hero from the American Revolutionary War. Then you have the big ones like Macy's and the St. Patrick's Day Parade, which I may or may not have been to. So details are sketchy. The point is that we have a lot of parades in this country. And even outside this country, South Korea, where the Winter Olympics is starting tomorrow, they have military parades. France, you mentioned that before. That's where the president got his idea. Look, I always love to play a game in these situations. Take out the name Trump proposes military parade and put in a name like Biden. And let's say Joe Biden said, you know, it would be a great idea to honor the folks in our military on July 4th in Washington, D.C. Would you see even one sniff of a reaction? I don't think so.
Well, so can I ask a sort of a meta question here? If Trump is a dangerous authoritarian dictator, why does it seem like left-wing federal judges are making all the key decisions?
That's a very good point, right? I mean, as far as press freedoms, I could at least speak to that. We had a daily briefing today. We've had daily briefings almost every day. Reporters are still on Air Force One. It seems the freedom of the press, in terms of opinions and the ability to report, hasn't been impeded in any way. So the totalitarianism argument doesn't seem to really apply here. And look, I'm like you. Personally, I'd have to see the costs first and the logistics around this.
Right.
I think it would be a good idea for the president maybe to go to Afghanistan and visit the troops, not just lip service, but actually back it up with action. He hasn't done anything like that yet.
Or how about bringing them home?
Also,
that might be the best way to honor them.
Too.
Get them out of there.
Yeah, good point. But I think, the presidential debate in 2016, 84 million people watched the first one, and all you see is a blue wall behind, right? I think it's a great opportunity, a military parade, or any time you think you have a lot of eyeballs on something, to use this as a fundraising effort. Maybe Home for Vets in this case, or St. Jude's Hospital, kids with cancer. And have this military parade, but have a network broadcast it without commercials and raise money off of it. And I think it would just be a very good thing. And I don't know why everybody has to get all upset just around a mere proposal around honoring our military.
Well, so very quick, I know you're not a physician and I'm not either, but do you think it's healthy to be as angry as a lot of these cable figures seem to be all the time, every day?
Oh, I think we're seeing a lot more performance art at this point, Tucker. I think we've talked about this. They're playing to a crowd. They know that their audience primarily is anti-Trump on some other networks, and they're just playing into their emotions. I don't even think they're even angry about half this stuff. I think they say, okay,
good. I hope not, because I'm starting to worry about Jim Acosta. Today. Is he going to be okay? But that's reassuring. Joe, thank you very much.
Good to see you. Giddy up.
Good to see you. Well, they stopped a terrorist on a train. Now they're portraying their own heroism, playing themselves on the silver screen. Up next, we'll talk to the stars of the 1517 to Paris. Stay tuned.
With Spencer, go.
Alex Carlotto, Spencer Stone, and Anthony Sadler are three friends who halted famously a terror attack on a French train in 2015, likely saving many lives. That got the world's attention and also Hollywood's. But rather than have actors play the three friends, director Clint Eastwood had them play themselves in the upcoming film 1517 to Paris. Alex, Spencer, and Anthony join us tonight. Great to see you guys.
Hey, thanks for having us, man.
Thank you.
So really, the story just got more amazing. Not only did you do this, and one of the great good deeds ever, but you got whole new careers out of it. What was it like? Had any of you acted before?
Never, not even a school play.
Well, then to go from like zero to Hollywood film directed by Clint Eastwood's it's a lot. How did you do it?
We honestly just did it how we did it the first time, really. That's pretty much the only advice he gave us, was just to be ourselves and do it how we did it.
Only Clint Eastwood could pull something like this off, so when he asked us, he gave us the confidence to attempt it, so we just had to try it.
Yeah, we just trust him so much. I mean, we knew going into it that he was going to do the story justice, and just having him, like Anthony said, have the confidence in us was all we needed.
What is it? Was it hard?
It was fun. I mean, it was hard at first, just getting used to it, but I think we caught a rhythm with it pretty quickly, and we actually have finished ahead of schedule, I believe.
He takes the weight of shooting a big picture, motion picture off of you. He just keeps it real light, and he's like, "You're with your two friends. Just do what you did, and I'll capture the rest." And when Clint Eastwood says that, you gotta trust him on that.
Yeah, and so what was it like filming the pivotal scene in the movie and in your lives on the train?
It was honestly just a lot of fun. I mean, a lot of people think it would be traumatizing, but luckily we don't have PTSD. I mean, nobody died that day on the train, and I mean, we just got to hang out for like a week on a train with your two best friends and Clint Eastwood. So
you get to do it. You get to do it twice. That's pretty cool. Yeah. And then now it's more than just the headline. Everybody gets to see actually what happened, how messy it was, how crazy it was, and hopefully it inspires people to maybe do something in these situations.
I feel like
that's it right there. And I'm not judging anyone. I haven't been in that kind of situation, but you see a lot of these things unfold, and nobody does that. Why do you think that is?
People are scared, which we were scared as well too. I think the unique thing about our situation is we were just on a train and we had nowhere to go. So I know that all these situations are different, all these different attacks and stuff like that. But hopefully this changes the narrative a little bit and inspires people out there that the common man can do something if they find themselves in the same situation.
Yeah, if they're brave. which you guys are, and that's always the key. So had any of you thought a scenario like that through before you got on the train? If I'm ever in this situation, here's what I'm going to do.
Actually, yeah, we have. We had talked about it. I mean, numerous times beforehand. I mean, we kind of played war growing up together, so we'd always ask each other, like, "Hey, if a guy comes in this room, what are you going to do?" And then our answers were always the same.
I think that was the biggest contributing factor is our friendship going back so far, and we all knew we'd be on the same page if something like that happened.
Yeah, but you actually did it. I mean, most people just talk about it. You did it.
We were just as surprised.
You know, yeah, just given the opportunity, and that's really it.
God, well, I'm glad Hollywood came to memorialize this for all time. Thank you guys for joining us tonight.
Congratulations. Thanks for having us, man.
At 8 to the show that's the sworn enemy of lying, pomposity, smugness, and groupthink. DVR it if you haven't already. And most of all, have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow. Hannity's next.